And the truth is, Jerry is more than the main character. Jerry is, I call Jerry the protagonist, but really Jerry's the partner, Jerry's the driver, because it's about Jerry's life. So Jerry gets to say.
Thank you all, first of all, for coming this afternoon. Thank you so much. It is so good to see so many friends, folk that I have known for so many years, and folk who have been part of this story. As Jeanette said, it's not an I story, it is our story, because there's nothing that I did in isolation of the folk who were around me. I am just totally honored and overwhelmed to be a part of this project. As I was saying to someone, I come from a community of strong people, and one thing that we learned was to work to make the world better. And they taught us how to muster up enough courage so that we could do that and do it in a way that it improved conditions for all folks. And so I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this project. And I'll let Courtney ask me some questions. But again, thank you all. And thank you to Candace and Kiara and to Courtney for putting up the quilts. You all did an awesome job, and the staff here at the Fruit, you all just did a fabulous job. Thank you for that. Yeah, because I think it's hard for folk to see.
Yeah. But we like to be on the ground. We both like to be on the ground. And I need to say something too before Jerry and I get too deep into conversation. So Tamar came on to this project after the first collection of images came at the Quilt Conference. And we have been having long distance phone calls and Zooms between the three of us for over a year at this point. And so more than the editing that Tamar did, the first pass, the first couple of versions of the film, as far as it's come so far, Tamar has really helped me think a lot, because I've never done this before. So think a lot about what it is that that we're trying to see and experience and do, and very importantly, she has reminded me of Show Don't Tell, and she's come a long way to be here today. So I just wanted to say thank you. And to also second Jeanette's comment about what Rafa and Leilani have brought. They work very much in alignment with the process that I want us to follow through on as we make this film, which is very much about liberation, very much about participant care, very much about reflection. We're gonna slow down, because Jerry has a big, big story to tell, and we want to do it well, and we want to do it beautifully, because look at these quilts, and they're characters in this film, and we have to figure out how to make that happen effectively. So thank you all. So you, ma'am, I love to hear you talk about your beginnings, about where you're from, and about how you got to be who you are, because there aren't a lot of people like Jereann. Solid as a rock. And Jerry has said to me that she prefers the term community builder to community organizer. And you know, if you're building something, you need a solid foundation. Jerry is a solid foundation. So how you got to be like that?
Well, I think for sure, you know, the foundation was my family and my community. as I said, we were taught, that you had to be courageous. I grew up in Southwest Georgia in a town called Bainbridge, Georgia. And I grew up doing Jim Crow. Right at the edge of Jim Crow, my graduating class, high school class, we were, I think, the last class of all segregated students. And it was a very tight-knit community. We were pretty free. My parents were hardworking, very community involved, and they did their best. They did their best. And I think that they sent me to college, and but it was 1969, 1970, and there was just too much going on. It was like right there at the fight for Black studies in Black colleges, which was, for some folk that doesn't make sense, but in 1969, 1970, that's what we were fighting for. And there was just too much more to do than to participate in the President's Day and make sure that my white dress was the proper length and so forth. So the movement called me. It was very compelling. And I ended up in Washington, D.C. and with a group called the Center for Black Education. And this group, I'm going to try to make this short. I can tell a story. So this group was really part of Federal City College, which was the first land-grant college in Washington, D.C., and organized by SNCC workers, and this guy named Jimmy Garrett, who had done all of this work in San Francisco around Black studies. So the Center for Black Education was the community-based version of Federal City College's Black education program. So that's how I got my footing in community organizing. We had little collectives. I was in the communications collective, and so I did all of that, and finally attended Federal City College, and then Antioch College, and then I had a housemate who was doing her internship in Warrenton, North Carolina. And she said to me, Jim, I don't know if you know this story, but she said to me, they need somebody to play jazz on the radio and to do a children's program. And so that's how I finished college. So I said, oh, okay, I'll go to Warrenton, North Carolina. And that's where I landed. And that experience at the radio station, WVSP Radio, that is what gave me my footing for work in North Carolina. Because at that time, whenever anything was happening in the region, Northeast North Carolina, Southside Virginia, we were there with microphones. That's when, you didn't just rely on what was coming down from National Public Radio or from the Associated Press. You read the newspapers, you had people calling, saying this is an issue. We knew that was what we wanted to be, voices serving people. And so that's what so that was my foundation. That's how I got to be, that's how I knew where Ahoskie, North Carolina was, or Lawrenceville, Virginia, or, all these places. Canito, North Carolina, what we call Courtney, High Tops, all of these places, because that's where we went to do programming. And I had a with Valeria Lee and with Jim Lee and Walter Northley, they helped me to really get grounded. So I stayed in Warrenton. I met my soulmate, Bernard Johnson, who's here, and I just never moved anywhere else. So finally, when the station moved to Rocky Mount, I stayed in Warrenton. I did adult education. I always did adult education as I worked at the radio station. And then someone got the idea that I might be a part of a bigger adult education, a bigger literacy initiative in the South. So then Paige McCullough comes to say, "You want a job?" And I said, "No." And then I talked to my sister, and my sister said, "Take the job." I talked to Valeria, Valeria said, "Take the job. You know, you need a job." So that's what I did. I did that work with literacy work in the South, and it was phenomenal. It was really phenomenal, and we worked with the University of Tennessee and with the National Institute for Literacy with Sandra Stein. And in that work, I found another cultural thread, because with the radio work, it was production work, it was deadline oriented, and it was fun. Got a chance to meet all of these jazz musicians, blues musicians. And so anyway, I did that work, and then I did work with the Rural School and Community Trust, and all the time, thinking about quilting. So here I am in Durham working with Literacy South, and Bertie Howard and Candace, they were around. Bertie came up and said, I want to show you something about quilts. Bertie loved talking about quilts, and I said, okay, let's start a group. And so Candace was there, Sauda, we all, said, let's start the African American Quilt Circle. And I did that, and so that was just a lot of fun. And then when I started working in Durham, I said, well, let's get together with the heritage quilters. So the passion for quilting was really just, it's just part of my interiority. That's my new word. It's part of what I do by myself as a meditation and with others as a meditation. It's that, because it's always been about groups of people. It's never been just about me. It was always something that was bigger than me. So that was that, and then we did some work. We organized African American Quilt Circle, and those sisters just went to town. They just went to town. The Heritage Quilters, we started out with a strong mission to build community, our focus, education, and youth. And that's why you see the teacher tour as part of that, the teaser there. And here lately, when 1921 came around, it was the anniversary for the double lynching that happened in Warren County. 2021 came around, and so Glenn Henson, who a lot of you know at UNC, he had been bringing his students up to Warren County for years, helping them to tell a larger story about a community event, a historical event, and talking about that lynching. He teaches anthropology and folklore. And so when 2020 came around, we said we have to do something to commemorate this lynching, and as an effort to demonstrate a community's resilience. It wasn't just about this double lynching with Alfred Williams and Plummer Bullock. It wasn't just about them, but it was about all of the context around that, the terror, the fact that those lynchings prompted people to leave the community, part of the out-migration of Black folk. There was land that was lost. People left the community, left their land, and at the same time there were Black institutions being built. And so we wanted to do a project, and we called it the 1921 Project, that incorporated all of that and to bring some awareness and consciousness around that history, which also impacts who we are today. In fact, it shapes who we are today in positive and negative ways. The resilience is one of the positive outcomes the negative stuff is we act as if we're still free. So anyway, that's pretty much where I am. That's a long story.
It's just, and you know, those of you that know Jereann, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And therein lies a challenge. There are so many stories, and I want to hear every single one, but every single one isn't going to fit in a film. I mean, it could be a series of films, or it could be a way of working with Jerry to solidify some of the things that she really does want to be in her forever archive, making a record of them, recording them so that she can transcribe them, and maybe she needs to write a book. Maybe that's part 2. But for me, part of what this film, working on this film is about is deepening my relationship with Jereann. So we belong to a women's group. Jereann and I belong to a women's group that has been in existence for
24 years. Who's the historian?
Claudia, but she's not here.
And I haven't been in it for all those years, but I've known most of the people in it for almost that amount of time. And Jerry is someone who, I've dipped my toe in, but I really want to know more about her. I want to know more about her life. She's, in my sister circle at this point. And we've had a lot of conversations in the women's group about the brilliance of Jereann's quilts and the amazingness of Jereann's stories. And as the person that worked in the documentary arts, I would try and make myself really small when those conversations would happen, because in my brain I was saying, I'm not a filmmaker. And I know some, and went around, and with film, it has to be a passion project, or it has to have a lot of money behind it to get a person to do it. And so this film is about love and building a relationship. And every part of it, from the way that we work together to what ends up being on the screen, is going to be a part of that. And there are resources that if anybody is particularly interested in participant care in nonfiction filmmaking, I would love to fill your brain with stuff about it and give you links to follow so that you can get into that practice too, because, I'm an about to be 66-year-old free Black woman. And I've been working in an extractive form for a really long time, and it's not okay. And so I'm gonna do everything I can from this side now to change the way documentary happens. So, I don't know, I don't even know what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the apples that came off your tree. They have apples in their yard. They have apples in a tree in their yard. I'm also fascinated that Jereann left Bainbridge and found her way to Warrenton. I love that story because I can't get over it. Like, she has so much to do that it's like, why did you choose us? Why did you choose North Carolina? Why did you stay here? Why didn't you go back to Georgia? And I'm sure there's a very good reason.
Right, well, I think, I came because of the radio station. That was the call.
But why did you stay?
Well, I stayed because I love the work. I really got involved. I love the production work. And I had a lot of opportunities to meet all kinds of musicians, blues musicians, jazz musicians, folk musicians, and all kinds of people doing justice work, the prison and jail project work, Acre, and all the folks in the 604 building. Y'all remember the 604 building? and the snow building, and
So it just kept happening.
it just kept happening. But really, like I said, I found my soulmate, and so I wasn't just gonna leave. I just couldn't leave, and so when the radio station moved to Rocky Mount, I did not want to live in Rocky Mount. So that's how I stayed. And the story, like I was saying, my story is all of y'all's story. I mean, there was something going on, and we wanted to be a part of it. So that's what kept me here in North Carolina. So after the radio station, there was Literacy South, and after that, there was the Rural School. These were the jobs. But, the other thing, you talk about the apple tree, once you set down plant roots, it's hard to leave them, and fortunately in Warrenton, we had enough land where we could plant different things, and I've never been a person to move a lot. It's been a problem too, because I couldn't imagine picking up all of that stuff and trying to take it somewhere else. Especially, so I think that's, I've lived here longer than any other place in the world, so this is home. And I've had incredible opportunities to work with you all, and so I just,
Will you tell people about the garden project that you're doing beside the church?
Yes. It's called the Everlasting Garden, and it started about 10 years ago, and it was on and off and on and off. A young man drowned in Carr Lake. And it was 10 years ago, and so the garden was sort of a memorial project. His family, they were there, and this whole issue of young people not knowing how to swim and so forth. So anyway, that's how the garden started. And here recently in Warren County and Vance County, there have been a lot of gun violence. So the garden project, it's not just about the cabbage and the broccoli and so forth, right? And we had an opportunity with UNC's Public Health, School of Public Health, to get a little bit of funding to get some raised beds. So once we had that opportunity, but in the real community, kids are shooting each other and killing each other. So we had to figure out how to bring those two things together. So the theme for the garden, it's still the Everlasting Garden, but the theme for this work that we're doing is plant gardens, not graves. Mm-hmm. So it's that Isaiah, there's some scripture from Isaiah that says, turn your swords into plowshares and your something into pruning hooks. And so that's what we have been operating on with the kids. And so we talk a lot about gun violence, what their experiences have been. We've had one family, one mother lost her son, and her other son was in the car behind the car where his brother was shot. And the cousin was in that car that was shot up and was paralyzed. So these kids are exposed to this, but nobody talks about what do we do about it. And so that's the conversation we're having with these kids. What can we do about this? They all know about gun violence, and one little one, 7-year-old, said, well, we just have to spread peace everywhere. That's what we have to do. How do we spread peace? And so the conversation, where does it start? Does it start in your classroom, in your school, in your community? And so the garden, when people see the kids working in the garden, there's a sense of hope, you know, and the old people come by and they say, oh, we're so glad to see them children. They need to know how to plant a seed and grow stuff. You know, I'm glad y'all doing this. This is so good. And we invite people in the community to, you know, take part in the harvest. So right now, lots of eggplant.
And Warrenton is not immune to gentrification. So while it seems way out in the country to me when I go there from here, it's living through what Durham was living through maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And so what's happening to the housing, and who's able to stay there, and whose children aren't able to afford to buy a home in the town where they grew up.
And we don't have a grocery store in town. That's the other thing. And so the fresh produce, I mean, people shop at the Dollar General and the Dollar Tree. And so, and you cannot find a tomato, an onion, a potato, lettuce, any of that in those stores.
And so while this film is focused on Jerry, there are a lot of other issues that we're thinking about and talking about, and there are other ways to get that information out into the world. I haven't figured it all out yet, but I know that there is a thing called impact producing, and there are folks who figure out how to make a film even more useful by having an impact on the community that it's coming out of. So something is going to go back into Warrenton. We don't know what it looks like yet, but we're committing to making that happen.
So can I say one final thing?
You can say whatever you want.
Did you have any more questions?
I don't.
Well, one thing, someone asked me, said, what do you talk about impact in the film? What would you like to see happen? What do you want people to take away from this? And I have to admit, y'all, I was not very excited about this idea initially. It was like, you know, why me? Lots of other folk, you know. I mean, lots of folk. But at any rate, so I finally am excited and I'm overwhelmed, like I said. I think I want people to take away a feeling that by the work of their hands, they can be motivated and relaxed and calm, and they can feel courageous to step outside the box and do something different, do something that improves the outcomes for this world. You know, us earthlings, we have to really get serious about where we are. So it's with our hands. And I know my quilting sisters know what I'm talking about, you know, how with our hands and the work that we can produce, how that motivates us and builds us up. So, and that's it. And again, thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks Candace and Kiara and Courtney for hanging the quilts. And my folk from the Heritage Quilters and the African American Quilt Circle, thanks so much. And thanks to Crystal Myrick, who is a young documentarian from Warren County, and y'all will be hearing about her. She does the Warrenist. If you want to know what's going on in Warren County, you know, just hit on the Warrenist. And thanks Michelle Lanier for all you have done to support me. And I'm gonna tell you somebody else way back when she wasn't even living in North Carolina. Where's Yvonne Coleman? Is she still here? Where is she? Must have gone. She went out. Anyway, she helped us out with the radio station, and that was a really good thing. So anyway, I can't call all the names, but you know, you all know that I feel very grateful and very appreciative of all that you have given me. Thank you.
So thank you for